Welcome to Work Better, a podcast where we think about work and ways to make it better. Elena, thank you for joining us on Work Better today.
Neurodiversity just means that there is a natural variation in brains, and that leads to differences in cognition, in emotion, in the way that we experience sensory stimuli, the way that we engage in social interactions. And it's not just about autism and ADHD. It can be OCD, schizophrenia, dyspraxia, dyslexia, any sort of mental health issue. You could categorize yourself as neurodivergent. And this is one of my favorite things about the neurodiversity movement is that we're really arguing, let's embrace how different our brains all are. You don't necessarily need to have received a diagnosis to identify as neurodivergent. It's basically taking a stance that, like, this is how my brain operates, and I'm going to embrace how my brain is existing, and ask that people kind of take the time to understand me and how my brain works rather than assume I should do things the other way that they think is correct.
I love that way of thinking. It just feels so much healthier to say, rather than expecting everybody to behave, in kind of more of a normative way, that is just celebrating the differences. I think that's great. And I want to build on that a little bit and think about, from a spatial perspective, if I were starting out thinking about an environment and wanting to create something that accommodates people who are neurodivergent, is there a risk that we exclude, and any other people in the process of doing that?
This is a really important question and a complicated one, I think, especially because I really am a proponent of trying to aim for universal design, but I'm also very clear that that doesn't mean there's one solution that's going to provide a universal solution for everybody. And so thinking about this, one thing that I can think about just in terms of neurodivergent needs and how those might kind of come into conflict with one another. So for example, I tend to move a lot. I make a lot of noise, and I need to do that to work and focus. And that's how my, neurodivergence is showing up for me at work.
Right.
For somebody else, they might be neurodivergent and need complete silence and not have a lot of visual movement around. So I think it's very overly simplistic to be like, let's put all the neurodivergent folks in one corner and assume that their accommodations are going to work out well, because that often might not be the case. But I'm also a strong proponent of that when we start focusing on or designing for people who have disabilities or who are sensitive and have higher support needs, that often has overlay, like spill out effects of benefits for other people. We can think about this intersectionally, even thinking about the deaf community and the neurodivergent community. So including captioning on video. Sure. A really, really important accommodation for people who are deaf. But a lot of neurodivergent people struggle with auditory processing. So it's not that we can't hear the sounds. It's that our brain might not understand them best when hearing them auditorily. And so having visual captions can help with that. So as much as there might be times where people's needs come in conflict, a lot of the time these needs are actually benefiting more people than the intended group. I think the best way to approach it is just make people comfortable to talk about their unique needs. And so that we can kind of say, like, okay, what are your sensory needs? It's not that you're a neurodivergent. What are your particular needs? And how can we make that fit well with somebody else's sensory needs who's going to be in your immediate surroundings and such like that? So,
yeah. Well, and how do you have this range of spaces that allow people to seek out what they need and to feel like they have permission to be able to utilize the spaces that are going to work for their brain in the best way, right?
Yeah, I think having a flexibility of spaces and zones of different spaces is one of the key strategies to providing an environment that can support diverse people. And so thinking about having sensory rooms where people can go if they need to move their body and have a low sensory experience and a high sensory experience. And these shouldn't be ideally rooms where it's just like, this is the sensory room for the neurodivergent people. A room where people know it's okay to do these types of activities and people can go there when they need to do that. Also having a range of spaces. talking about maybe having private offices for certain types of work, and then maybe some open offices for other types of work, rather than taking a one solution fits all. Like, we're just going to have an open office space and everyone's going to have to make it work in there. Why not have both options? And if I'm in a certain type of activity where I want to have somebody next to me, in neurodiversity, movement, one of the terms that people are getting really excited about is body doubling.
Interesting. What's that?
Body doubling is a strategy where the presence of another individual can actually increase your ability to focus and get stuff done. And so there's a couple different theories of how that's working, but whether just having that amount of stimulus next to you, having the social pressure of somebody else working next to you, or just seeing somebody else can often prompt us to want to get stuff done. And so I think like an open office space can be really great to provide opportunity for body doubling. If maybe there's an area where there's desks and people can come sit because they want to work with other people. But when we only have an open office space and don't allow for there to be private rooms or private offices, then that can be really difficult.
We'll release episodes weekly each season. You can find us on your favorite podcast platform, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Just search for Work Better. And make sure to subscribe to get new episodes as soon as they're released.